Frank Gaffney is one of America's most important national security voices. He served the Senate Armed Services Committee in Reagan's Pentagon and is a host of Securing America on Real America's Voice and Secure Freedom Radio. Frank is a longtime friend and a colleague as Vice Chairman of the Committee on the Present Danger of China. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Yes, welcome back.
Very glad to be back.
Last time you were here, we were talking about the global power grab from the World Health Organization. Then came the spectacular Trump victory on November 5th, and we were together just recently at a leadership meeting in Washington, D.C. I want your thoughts on the election and how that impacts all the things we've talked about.
Well, there was another development between the WHO power grab and Donald Trump's re-election, praise God, and that was the UN had a power grab of its own. So that movement inexorably towards global government, which the Biden administration has been all about, it's, I believe, their effort to achieve what Barack Obama famously described as the fundamental transformation of the United States, despite the American people and the democracy that they profess to be so concerned about. They're getting the UN, they're getting the World Health Organization, they're getting the Chinese Communist Party, which controls them all, to advance the agenda of taking down our sovereign constitutional republic, and in the process, our freedoms.
And they've had to have been accelerated. I mean, you see that Trump's
100%.
coming into the White House on January 20th. So you got 20 days there, you got 30 in December, and you got 25. Add that all up, less than 100 days. They're going to cram all 4 years into that 100 days and get deeply entrenched. The deep state gets even deeper, right?
If they have their way, there's no doubt about it. And another example of this, by the way, is in this next few days, as we're speaking, the administration, I believe, will connive with the United Nations to do possibly irreparable harm to Israel. Again, knowing full well that the Trump administration coming in, the mandate it received from the American people is completely at odds with that, as is the popular sentiment for that matter. Poll after poll after poll is indicating the American people are on Israel's side, not Hamas, not Hezbollah, not Iran's, and yet the Biden-Harris administration is working for our enemies.
Despite the fact that they were advertising in Pennsylvania, we're behind Israel 100%, let them finish the job. Of course, that's not what they advertise in Michigan, is it?
Not so much, and nor is it what they're doing, more to the point. And what we're seeing, and back to your observation about this perilous 100 days, they are intent on, as one of our colleagues, Ann Bayevsky has put it, Trump-proofing the, foreign policies, the national security policies, and I think a lot of the domestic policies, if they can, with, of course, the, benefit of the deep state or administrative state or whatever you want to call the permanent bureaucracy.
Yeah, well, and then so Pete Hegseth gets in. Let's see, he gets approved, he's Secretary of Defense. He has a period of his term that's going to be required to be focused on cleaning up problems if he can even find them.
If he can do something about them, it's the other problem. I mean, the finding of them is probably not going to be so hard because I think it's going to be right in his face. And that's the point. This is about trying to undo the mandate that the president-elect has received. And I again, it's infuriating to me that we were saturation bombed, and it's still some of it going on now, with this whole notion that but for the Biden team, we would have no democracy at all. Well, what is in fact being played out here is they have been the problem for democracy all along, and they are even more determined now to defy the will of the American people expressed in the recent election.
Well, there's no question that they were the problem. All right, so you have an unelected, not one single primary vote thrust onto the ballot, and we're told, as she spends billions of dollars, $1.02 billion at least, explaining why she's the only hope for democracy by hiring Oprah and pop stars and everything else to tell us that. They hired them by, we'll pay you for a set. I'll tell you what, if they would pay us, Economic War Room, just to put up a set, $500,000 a pop, we'll do that for them. Even for the Democrats, they'll do it for $500,000 a pop, just setting up the set, because it didn't work for them. The American people did see through it, didn't they?
Yeah. As long as you're not going to tell me that you would be on that set.
No.
Shilling for the person who paid for the set.
They wouldn't hire us because they'd be fearful we'd sabotage it.
I was going to say, I'd be in the wrong war room if that were the case.
They'd be fearful we'd sabotage it. We'd certainly mic it up pretty good. But no, the point is that they can't buy their way. And we don't live in a democracy anyway. We both know it is a republic, if we can keep it. It's a constitutional republic established by democratic means. And I like the fact that we get to vote. The American people voted, and they made clear they didn't want any more of that. I don't think Washington, D.C. got that.
What they probably mostly didn't get, but you and I do, is that was a miracle. It takes nothing away from Donald Trump and the hard work that he put into it and the good people that pulled in behind him and all the rest of it, but it still was miraculous. And praise God that it was done in not only the ultimate outcome, but that it was so manifestly clear, and clear by 3 o'clock in the morning, no less.
Right.
That's truly the hand of God. And I hope, as you said, with your example of Pete Hegseth, that people like him will similarly be able very quickly to take on the responsibilities to which they've been assigned.
Now, you know him somewhat, don't you?
I do.
And he's a good guy, right?
I think he's a very good man, indeed. And the thing about it is, it's not just that he's a good man, it's not just that he's got some, I think, very relevant experiences. He's determined to try to right the ship.
He's more than just a Fox News weekend host, though. I mean, that's a unnecessary.
And that's the best thing they say about him.
Right.
But the thing is, if you take even a glance at his latest book, The War on Warriors, which is really about what we are doing to sabotage the men, as he very deliberately put it, who keep us free. It's clear he's a man on a mission, and it's exactly the right mission, which is to get all of that out of the Pentagon.
We have to take a break. We'll be right back with more. In uncertain times, finding stability in the economy can feel challenging. But what if you could navigate economic volatility while honoring your biblical values? At Timothy Plan, they believe this balance is possible. Timothy Plan filters its volatility-weighted ETFs and family of mutual funds through a biblical pro-life and pro-family lens, so you can see competitive returns and moral responsibility, helping you to weather the economic storms. With Timothy Plan, align your investments with your values while adapting to our ever-changing culture. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has been recognized leader in biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, your bridge between faith, finances, and the future. Visit timothyplan.com or call 1-800-TIM-PLAN or 1-800-846-7526. Investing includes risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com.
Somewhere a perversion has taken place. Our natural unalienable rights are now considered to be a dispensation of government, and freedom has never been so fragile, so close to slipping from our grasp as it is at this moment.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It has to be fought for and defended by each generation.
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
In this most critical time in our nation's history, now more than ever, Americans need to align with companies that support our constitutional rights and God-given freedoms. Patriot Mobile supports your values and provides exceptional 100% US-based customer service. Join the movement today. Go to patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT.
Frank, I think we have the most exciting opportunity since you were in the Reagan White House or Pentagon to fundamentally take America back to what the Constitution required. How do you feel?
Well, I think that's true. And I think the fact is that there's so much further that it has to get back from than was true with Reagan. Just to talk about the Pentagon for a minute, I remember vividly thinking at the time that Reagan had to basically apply water and maybe a little miracle grow to bring the plant of our military back to life after it had been starved, basically, by Jimmy Carter. In the intervening period, especially during the last 4 years, Obama's too, that plant has been pulled up by the roots. So it's a question of doing some radical surgery and, yes, nurturing it and curing it. And I think that can be done with the right leadership. And I will just tell you, Kevin, I've been talking to a lot of people about, can Trump possibly pull all this off? And the single most important part of it, I think, really is trying to remedy what has been done by successive presidencies, again, principally Carter and Clinton and Obama, and then, of course, Biden, or Obama 3.0, as I call him, to inflict on that constitutional republic this immense bureaucratic state, the fourth branch of government, they call it. That has to be remedied, but it's only possible, really, if it's done from the White House. You can deploy a good secretary here and there, right, but they get ground down. They get essentially stymied at every turn. The one hope is it's been now elevated to a national priority. The president himself has been given a mandate to not just drain the swamp in a kind of abstract sense, but to specifically dismantle that deep state, that administrative state. And I think that if it's possible to do it, this team will do it, and it certainly needs to be.
They haven't been starved of money. I mean, during the Reagan years, they actually took money out of the defense budget and so forth before Reagan came in. There's been plenty of money. It's just been focused on a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of people that are not war fighters, not equipment, not anything that can win wars, but a lot of DEI and all of the other things, social policy and so forth. Now the money's there. I'm hopeful, and what I think is the really thing that gives me hope, because our budget mess is so bad, but if we have Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy coming in with a blowtorch and a chainsaw, I think that can divert enough attention that we can actually clean house in a lot of ways, because they'll be fighting just for their lives.
There's already some evidence that they're planning to bail out rather than find themselves subjected to that kind of house cleaning and the turmoil that will entail, And so it's like deportation. If you can persuade a lot of people they don't want to be forcibly removed, get out of here while they can.
Springfield, Ohio is now watching an exodus of people because of the election that said, I'm not sure we want to stay here.
Right.
There are a lot of positives that will come where people self-select that they don't want to face that judgment. Yes.
Exactly right.
All right, so here's some key issues. Border, China, Middle East, national debt, enemy within. Go through any of those. Pick a topic and say what you think we need to do.
Well, I think I'd start with China, because I think that frankly is
I'm so surprised.
The biggest of all of the problems. I have a unified field theory that virtually everything that ails us today is either directly or at least indirectly spawned by the Chinese Communist Party.
And good news is,
and its friends.
Trump recognizes China more than any other as a concern. Now, it's mostly economic, but at least he recognizes that our future does not lie in Beijing, as Obama did, as Biden did, as Clinton did.
Yeah. I think it's actually bigger than economic. I think he really has, going back for decades, viewed China as a serious
Fantastic.
security problem and strategic adversary as well. And he's surrounding himself now with people like Mike Waltz as his national security advisor, and Marco Rubio is his Secretary of State, and Pete Hegseth is
I know
his
it's spelled
defense
differently,
secretary.
but Mike Waltz is preferable over Tim Waltz infinitely.
Infinitely, indeed. There's a T
Yes.
in it, as in the dance, and that makes all the difference. it
Well, the
turns
T
out.
stands for truth, and we're happy to have it, yes.
Truth and clarity about the world we're in that I think is desperately needed. Let me just say, you look at the borders. The Chinese have put across that open border, by some estimates, low estimate 10,000, high estimate 200,000 People's Liberation Army personnel. That's a disaster in the making. I mean,
Even
it's a
10,000
ticking time bomb.
is desperately
Listen,
horrible.
You saw what 19 untrained amateurs did to us on 9/11.
Right.
Imagine if you've got 1,000 trained special operators from China with the express purpose of being here, not just to blow up a building here and there, but to destroy our infrastructure, to assassinate our leaders, and otherwise
And worse
impair our
still
economy.
is that they don't come here with I'm going to do all the work. They hire others that will do the dirty work. You look at the risk of 9/11. There were Chinese fingerprints in 9/11. I don't know to what degree, but I know there was an
Chinese and
awareness.
Iranian too. I mean,
Yeah.
most of those guys didn't get tagged at all. You look at the national debt, you know infinitely more about this than I do, but I agree with you. I think that this is now at a point where when you're spending more on servicing that debt than you are on the United States military, at a moment when I believe the Chinese are poised to go to a shooting war with us, this is a national security peril of the first order. And the reality is, as you know, we're adding $1 trillion every 100 days or something like that to the debt. At some point, you can't afford whatever you need for your military, or you're going to have to tell the people who
You
are your
have to
creditors.
borrow money from China to buy the weapons to fight China. That's not going to work.
Well, and as you also know, we've got an even worse irony, I guess, and that is we continue, thanks to your friends on Wall Street, to pour our money into China.
We're buying
which
their
we then
weapons.
borrow back.
Yes.
They use it to build weapons. They use it to get 150 now.
At the end of the
countries
day,
around the
they're
world
the
on their side.
manufacturer taking the money from both themselves and from us.
Indeed. And they are weaponizing it for the purposes of that shooting war, or at least coercing us into submission.
All right, we're going to have to cover this a little more after the break. When we come back, let's talk about how we beat China.
Oh, hi, I'm Kevin Sorbo, and I'm here to tell you about coffee. Well, not really, but I'm going to use coffee to illustrate my point. Here we have several different coffees, each with its own unique characteristics. First, we have instant coffee. This coffee pretends to be coffee, but it's not really coffee at all. It's a fraud. Plus, it tastes terrible. I'm out. Next, we have woke coffee. Their coffee actually tastes pretty good, until you find out that when you drink it, you have to admit that you've oppressed other coffees in the past. Insanity. I'm out. Next, we have Big Tech Coffee. Now, these guys used to encourage folks to share with others what they thought about their coffee. But now, if you say you don't like Big Tech Coffee, they'll take away your coffee pot. I'm out. This brings us to Patriot Mobile Coffee, right? This is one big cup of truth and freedom. There's no fraud here. Patriot Mobile is America's real Christian conservative wireless provider. Patriot Mobile gives back millions of dollars every year to organizations that are on the front lines fighting for our freedoms. Patriot Mobile offers the best nationwide 4G and 5G coverage on the same networks as the other major carriers. So you'll get the same great coverage along with 100% US-based customer support while knowing you are supporting a company that shares your conservative values. Switch to Patriot Mobile today by visiting patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT.
Frank, before the break, we were talking about the threat from China. It was an interesting room recently at this leadership conference. I was there, John Lanchowski was there, Roger Robinson was there, you were there. I mean, people that were intimately involved with beating the greatest threat to that point in history, the Soviet Union. And you were at Reykjavik. You know, I mentioned, I think Lenchowski was at Reykjavik. You said, well, I was. You were at Reykjavik. You saw that all happen. You watched Roger kind of being the maestro, organizing the orchestra of economic warfare that we did, and we won. I mean, we had strategic policy, we had nuclear policy, and all that was necessary to contain. We need an all-of-the-above solution for China. But at that meeting, you introduced me to a man who has an ETF solution, because all of America is like, well, you got to invest in China. All the advisors, we're trying to train them not to, but you got the futures in China. So how do we defund the Chinese war machine that we've been funding? Talk about that for a minute.
Well, let me just say at the outset, what you're doing to train investors or managers of investors not to put money in China is incalculably important. The National Security Investment Consultants Institute is, as far as I'm concerned, a key piece of what do we do about China. But so is the larger purpose that it serves, which is to actually reprise, albeit with a much more challenging existential threat to freedom than the one we defeated in the Cold War, namely the Chinese Communist Party. The effort that Roger, as you say, orchestrated and helped execute when President Reagan went after the hard currency cash flow of the evil empire. It's even more important, as you know better than anybody, Kevin, that we deprive the Chinese Communist Party of the investment funds that mostly unwitting retail American investors are making, because the Wall Street mavens who deploy their pension funds and their exchange-traded funds, mutual funds, what have you, continue to be committed to putting some of it, at least, in China.
Either
the
from
fellow that
greed,
you mentioned,
naivete, or they've been co-opted.
Self-interest, indeed. And that's a piece of this story about what do we do about China that we come back to. But just on this one, Justin Bernier is the man who was with us,
right,
who was talking about a national security emerging market index exchange-traded fund that he has brought to NASDAQ and is actively offering American investors and others an option that if they feel, for whatever reason, institutional requirements or their aspirations for making some money, they're going to continue to invest in China. They get to screen out the bad actors that are unmistakably taking that money and using it to help our enemies build up their military machine, and by the way, also abuse the Chinese people. So that's a very promising development, coupled with what I think is, thanks again to Roger and Maria Bartiromo and others, a concerted effort to raise awareness that we cannot continue to underwrite our mortal enemy.
You know, you and I both have a mutual friend, Art Alley. He's a sponsor of this program through the Timothy Plan, and he's built an amazing investment firm on the idea that if you're a Christian, you don't want to be investing in people that destroy your values. And he's grown
literally
remarkably.
Or figuratively.
And here, the idea is if you want to invest globally, emerging markets in particular, you can't ignore China entirely, but you certainly don't want your money to be building weapons that are aimed at us.
Honestly, my aspiration is that you do write them off completely. You go ex-China, you go ex-Hong Kong.
Well, I can see why you do that, but a lot of corporate managers won't allow you to do that. A lot of pension funds require that you have. So there's a lot of money on the sidelines that's either going to invest in bad China or not invest at all.
Or, more to the point, Justin's got a terrific brief at nationalsecurityindex.com in which he shows that if you're in any emerging market, basically these days, you're investing in China, and you are investing, in fact, in the worst of these bad actors. This is an option to stay in China, but remove that. And the other piece of this that I just wanted to mention, Kevin, in terms of what do we do about China, I think the single biggest problem we've got beyond the underwriting that we're doing is that we've got all these people, not just on Wall Street, as you know, they're in Hollywood. they're in the media, they're in academia, they're in our political life, who have been what the Chinese call captured elite, and who are more or less actively batting for the other team. Our colleague Trevor Loudon, who is a genius, one of the great experts in our country, and I would argue the world, in terms of the enemy within problem, which is the title of a book and movies and other things he's worked on. He's come up with an idea. It's not his own idea, but it's an application that I think is uniquely being advanced by him, and that is treat this, well, call it what it is, transnational criminal organization. This is one of the points we make in our book, The Indictment, as the mafia it is, and use a technique that has proven very effective against the mob, and that is turn them against each other, create an amnesty incentive to cut your deal, go state's evidence, and help cause turmoil, if not essentially the collapse of the mob, because they don't know who they can trust and they don't know whether they're going to get right. They need to make a deal. That's what we need to be doing right now with the so-called captured elites of America, to turn them back to being on our side, at least some of them, and make sure the rest of them are vilified and indicted, at least in the court of public opinion.
I love that because it unshackles the Chinese people. There is a hugely productive, brilliant, loving, kind, wonderful people being held in bondage by the Chinese Communist Party, and they need to be released. Like in the mob example, you couldn't call every Italian American a mobster because that simply wasn't true. And most Chinese people are wonderful. It's a small fraction of the Chinese Communist Party. Well, Frank, how can people support what you're doing?
I am currently mostly available through securingamerica.tv or at Substack, securingamerica.substack.com, and would welcome support as well as followers.
And of course, the Committee on the Present Danger, China. All right, we're going to summarize all of these things at our economic battle plan that you can find a copy of, economicwarroom.com. Now, Frank, where do you find the Committee on the Present Danger? PresentDangerChina.org. PresentDangerChina.org. Remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.